Well, greetings to you from Mattingly Hall in Cambridge. I will be doing two more lectures from Mattingly Hall. I will be collected, as they say in Britain, and taken to Wolfson College, Cambridge, and I'll be dorming there, and I'll do some videos from there in reasonably short order. But as one student to another, I'm wanting to say hello to you. What I have on the menu to do after we pray together today is to take a look at Genesis. I hope you saw my email and have copied if you're able to make hard copy. I want you to be able to have a copy of the notes for Genesis here. I have mine and I have notes on them, and it's the way that I study myself. Even you'll see here that's Exodus, and you'll see there's notes, and they say that a dull pencil is better than a sharp brain, and so it's just good to get in the habit of writing things down. And I want you to be able to develop that good study habit, not just for purposes of Old Testament survey, but just for the purposes of school. I think there's a correlation between getting a good education and having a good life and being successful in life. And so I want you to develop the right kind of habits, and note-taking certainly is one. So I hope you have that. We're going to go ahead and pray together, and after which I'll just say a few introductory things about the way I want to work these outlines, and then we'll just have at it. I'm really excited to get into the Bible more directly, rather than just talk about the course and give an overview of the Bible. I want to get into the literature, so we'll do that. Let's pray, okay? Lord, we bless your name, and we thank you for this time together, and thank you for these good people that afford me the opportunity to minister. And I pray, Father, that you open up their understanding to the Older Testament, Father, that help them to get a grasp of biblical literature, Father. And thank you for affording me the opportunity to be a guide to them into this world, Father. And I pray you make it meaningful for them and give me clarity in speech. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, now let me tell you what we're going to do with these outlines. I liken it to a radiologist. You know, you get an x-ray, and it gives you a picture of the spine, the basic structure. You've heard me already to give voice to wanting to give the basic structure to the Older Testament. And the way I want to do these books is just look at these individual books the same way. And so we have outlines to that effect. You'll see with Genesis, there are 4 parts to this outline, and I want you to have it in front of you. The first of which is the creation narrative in chapter 1 through 2, verse 3. Then you have what's noted here is the primeval history. Primeval, primus is the Latin for first, and avum is the Latin for ages, so primeval, first ages. And then right in the aftermath of that, I speak of primordial men and women. Again, primus is first, and ordere is order, the first order. We have Adam and Cheva, Adam and Eve, and there's a brief window into, primeval history with Adam and Cheva, and then subsequent issues, which I'll review in a moment. Subsequent to that, then, we get to chapter 12, really. I'm looking at the 3rd section, the patriarchal era. Patriarch comes from the Latin pater, which is father, and arche, which means rule. And it harks to a kind of social structure in these smaller tribal communities before they federate into cities and nation states. You have these family units, and you have this alpha male on the assumption it's a patriarch as opposed to a matriarch from mater, which is for mother. But you have these patriarchs, the first of which is Avram, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And you're looking at, early Hebrew experience. Before there ever is a nation, there's this little tribal community. And that's all we're going to get in Genesis, by the way. The story of God at work with a tribe. And I call it But the patriarchal era, Israel, primogenitive history. Prima is first, and genitive is gene. The first gene. You look at these alphas, and I move on from there in chapter 37, verse 2 to 50, verse 26, what I call the Egyptian era number 1. Now, there's an Egyptian era number 2. I mention this because you might recall when you look at the patriarchs, you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. Joseph is sold into slavery in Egypt, and the family winds up moving into there. And chapter 37, verse 2 and on gives a window into that story. So you've already heard me to say that the key chapter and verses for Genesis, chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, and you've already heard me to light upon that if you look at early Genesis, in 12:1 through 3, there's the promise of a great nation, but the promise is never realized. You're just looking at a little tribal group that winds up moving into the land of Egypt. And that's Genesis. Okay, that's one go through. Now let's do it again. Going back to the top here, you've already heard me to say relative to the creation narrative that there's very little about it. You know, in Genesis 1:1, Bereshit bara Elohim. Bara, third person singular masculine, he created. God is noted as the creator in no uncertain terms. Some look for 24-hour days with creation. Some look at epochs in human experience or you know, time blocks as opposed to 24-hour days. Dennis Lindsay, a literalist, prefers 24-hour days. His father, Gordon Lindsay, preferred periodization, swatches of time rather than 24 hours of days. I don't care personally. There's different ways that evangelicals look at it, but one thing that's clear to the literature, in no uncertain terms, is that God is represented as the creator of the heavens and the earth, and then people on the earth. In Genesis 26, Vayomer Elohim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu, God said, "Let us make man in our image and in our likeness." Man is made in the imago Dei, to use the language, to use Latin, in the image of God, in 126. And you read about that and more. And then they're placed in the garden. We'll get to that. But after God makes the heavens and the earth and people on the earth, then he rests. You look in Genesis 2, verses 1 and on. Vayiklu hashamayim v'retz v'kol tziva'am vayikal Elohim hayom hashvi'i malachta v'asher asah. God worked, and then he rested. I want to open it up. So the heavens and the earth were completed along with their entire array. I'm looking at Genesis 2. God completed on the seventh day his work that he made, and he ceased on the seventh day from all the work that he had made. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, for in it he ceased working. Now the Sabbath is the seventh day. Some people mistakenly refer to Sunday as the Sabbath, the Christian Sabbath. Well, that may be a worship day for Christians and a rest day, but the Sabbath is the day before. Actually, not the day before, but we're oriented. That is, America is oriented to a solar calendar, whereas the Bible is oriented toward a lunar one. Now, if you look at these days of creation, after each day in Hebrew, it says, Vayihi erev, vayihi boker, yom echad. And it was evening and it was morning, day 1, day 2, day 3. It says it was evening and it was morning. That in the Hebrew Bible, the day begins at the night, not at midnight. As soon as the sun goes down and a few stars appear in the sky, that's the beginning of the new day. So the day begins at the darkness, and then it goes from, it was the evening and then morning, and that's the way the days progress in the literature. So actually the Sabbath is Friday night sundown through Saturday night sundown. And that's what we're talking about here. It's very important for Hebrew people to observe the Sabbath. You know, I pastor a Messianic Jewish congregation, a Hebrew Christian work, and we have our services on Friday nights. And that's the way Jews do it, either a Friday night Sabbath service or a Saturday morning. To refer to Sunday as the Sabbath is arguably mistaken. I don't want to make much of it here, to get into some kind of theological fight over it all. But it just isn't. The reason why Christians worship on Sunday isn't to replace a Sabbath. It's because the Lord gathered they gathered together to worship the Lord on the first day of the week when he had risen. It's really in honor of the resurrection. In any case, not to belabor that, you see just a few succinct statements about the origin of the planet and the species. Not much is said about it. This author is not bent. It's a big book, okay? And there's very little said about creation. It's not a college textbook of the origin, of the species. It's more about the origin of the feces, if you will, the crap. What you get in the literature is God made a perfect planet, made mankind in his image, and placed him on the planet, put him in a good world in Eden, then it all fell apart. I mean, it all hit the fan. And, Genesis records the beginnings in the heavens and the earth, the beginnings of the vitiation of the peoples on the earth, the defilement of the people because of sin, and then the beginnings of dealing with a particular tribe, Abraham. Well, I want to go to the next section, chapter 2, verses 4 through 11:26, what I'm calling primeval history. You have the beginnings of Adam and Chava in chapter 2:4, verse 25. In chapter 3:1 and on through verse 24, of course, Adam and Chava are placed in Eden and given a mandate to not eat, but they do. Actually, Adam, when he was told not to engage the fruit, the forbidden fruit, Eve wasn't even created yet. There's an issue there. There's a failure to communicate. That is to say, when later on, as you read in the story, there's this hissing creature, psst, hey lady, what about this fruit? Well, we're not supposed to, that she was parroting whatever instructions were given to her from her husband. Because she wasn't around when God said, hey bud, don't do the fruit on the tree thing. She wasn't around then. He fell asleep and woke up, and then he looked at her and said, no, that's what I'm talking about. And bingo. But there's some failure to communicate, and he's ultimately responsible to do that. And by the way, that is a difference in the Jewish world than in the Christian world. A lot of times in the Christian world, it's the women that are more passionate, they're more pious, they're more religious, and the men just begrudgingly are drug off to Sunday school and to church. In the Jewish world, it's incumbent upon the male to inculcate biblical value and virtue in his children, more so than the woman. That's the ideal. I'm not saying that that's the way it always works out. In any case, Adam would have told her about the fruit thing, but she kind of knew she wasn't supposed to do it, and she did. And you have subsequent to that what we call the fall of man. To me, among other things, is the classic story of not taking responsibility, not owning it. When the Lord shows up and said, hey, what's going on here? Who did this? The man says, don't talk to me. My old lady made me do it. The woman says, well, look, the snake made me do it. No one wants to own the moment. They don't want to be honest about it. If people are honest and own the moment, they give God something to work with, but they don't. And that in so many ways is the original sin. The word sin, there's different words actually for sin in the Hebrew Bible. The most employed one, I believe, is the word chet, the word chet. Let me hear you say chet, back there, guttural. It comes from to miss the mark. It's like if you're shooting at an archery target, there are circles, and you're aiming for dead center, and you shoot it, but the arrow verves off, sways off. That's really the word for sin. Humans have that proclivity, that tendency. Would that individuals were just honest about it. Adam and Cheva weren't. And they blame. He blames her, she blames Snake. It's never good. It's best just to own the moment. I discriminate on the basis of honesty when I'm vetting individuals at the police academy, which is one of the things that I'm responsible to do as the director of it. Individuals that are dishonest. If someone screws up, just own it and we can talk about it. I don't expect perfection. I'll tell them, listen, if Jesus Christ wants to come and be a cadet in my police academy, then we'll have perfection. Other than that, I only have mortals to deal with. You look here at sin, makes its entrance in the stage of the human drama. The race is vitiated, it's defiled, and you can see they're kind of dodging and gaming about it all, and they wind up getting kicked out of paradise as a result. And then in chapter 4 and on, fratricide falls on the heels of the original sin. Fratricide, from frater, it's the Latin word for brother. Brother kills brother. Jealousy, you see that. In chapter 5, you see other sins. You see assault. One man boasts to his wives, plural. I killed a man, he assaulted me, and I took care of him. Now, you can see, you haven't read 5 minutes into the Bible till you realize that according to this literature, God made mankind, and he set him up well. But you haven't read 5 minutes into the literature till you realize something has gone horribly wrong. Something has gone horribly wrong. You see a property crime, theft. As soon as you have don't take, this is not yours, don't have it. Then it creates a kind of fascination. Well, gee, I wonder what that is. I often say that if God wouldn't have said, don't eat from that tree, don't do that, they would have walked right by it. There's trees all over the place. But there's something about don't do it that creates a certain kind of fascination that wouldn't otherwise be there. It's the nature of sin, by the way. The word lust itself is from a Latin word meaning desire for the forbidden. There's just something about don't do it that in and of itself creates and awakens a certain interest which wouldn't otherwise be there. I mean, looking at this literature, not as a theologian, but as a police officer, I wrap crime scene tape all around it. The yellow crime scene tape all around this. It's just a mess. You have a property crime, you have deceit, you have murder with Cain and Abel, you have assault and murder, and you have another thing, polygamy too. In, where is it, in chapter 5, let me find it here real quick. In chapter 4, verse 23, Lamech said to his wives, hear my voice, Lamech's wives, listen to my speech, for I have killed a man for wounding me, and a boy for bruising me. Now, there are a few things wrong with that. What I want to underscore here is that he's speaking to his wives, plural. Plural. According to biblical literature, a man was to leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, singular, not wives, plural. There's something about this acquisitiveness that it's not the ideal, put it like that, that there are a number of things in the literature that represent that something has gone wrong. Now, I understand polygamy, and you can't build a case against polygamy in the Old Testament. It's a different world. What do I mean by that? Not only in the Old Testament do you not build a case against polygamy? There's Old Testament instruction about managing it. Specifically, let's say I have 2 sons, and I do. Let's say if I lived thousands of years ago in the Old Testament world, if a girl married my son and my son died in war, then she would then become the wife of my other son, who might have another wife. You keep it in the family. Let's say in a world before birth control and before television, people made love at night and you have a lot of babies. And let's say my son has 3 children and then he dies in battle. Well, you don't want that woman and those children going somewhere else. No, you keep it within the family. It's called marrying within the family. Now, if you figure a population of boys and girls, babies that are male and female grow approximately the same. But when you look at where the ancient Israel was located in the ancient Near East, when you consider that, with all the wars, all these armies going through the region, with that at play, you have this constant hiving off of young males that have to bear arms in defense of home and hearth. So if you figure a population grows equally, men and women, you figure you can have a death rate of the males of the species, the young men, at a much higher rate, with the net result, there's going to be a disproportionate number of women and men. And if you have to maintain the ideal, 1 man and 1 woman, then there are going to be a lot of women that don't have a man, they don't have the security in the family. So you're going to, of necessity, develop mechanisms for doubling up. There's a way that that's managed, but again, what precipitates it is war and untimely death of males. And again, we're just dealing with something that's not the ideal. If you look at biblical literature, the ideal is 1 man, 1 woman. That's what it is. And by the way, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. According to biblical literature, it's a man and a woman. In any case, you look at the literature briefly, we're told that God created the heavens and the earth, and then there's the story of a man and a woman on the earth, and there something has gone horribly wrong. Subsequent to which then, if you look in chapter 6, verse 1 through 9:29, God is not a happy camper. He says enough already and wipes it out, save for Noah, save for him. And there's a story there of a building of a boat and the family entering the boat with animals. And by the way, there's some 50 ancient stories of a great destruction in a family and a boat that survives it. In antiquity, one of the more famous ones is called the Epic of Gilgamesh. If you look at the biblical narrative of the flood, there are other accounts of that in other historical texts. Well, according to the biblical reckoning, God is displeased with what he has made, with what's become of it. After the flood, Noah and his sons go out, and then they spread out. The various sons go different directions, and there's some chronicling of some 70 nations that are descended from them, beginning there and then spreading out. With that then, with the recorded nations in chapter 10, there's the story in chapter 11 of Babel, and then in verses 1 through 9, and then in 11:10 through 26, one of Noah's sons, Shem, there's a story of his progeny, his offspring. And Abram is descended from that lineage. With Abram then introduced, or his background, then we get to a pivot point in the literature, which gets more so to the intentionality of the author. By that I mean, while Genesis, the key word is beginnings, and while it records the beginnings of things, heaven and the earth and the people on the earth, and the beginnings of, Adam and Eve and what happened subsequent to that, while you have that, the literature isn't so much about that. It's as much as it is singling out a person, Abram, and then telling his story, not just through the rest of the book, to be sure, that's the case, but through the rest of the Bible. God's going to deal with a people group. I want to look in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. You've heard me to recite it, but I want you to look at it with me, please. If you're game to underline, then feel free to do so. It really is an important passage. So let me just get to it here. This isn't normally the Bible that I use. The pages are stiff. What it is, I'm here at Cambridge, and I'm going to give this away to one of my fellow students. I don't know who yet, but I'll bring a new Bible every time I come here and give it away. So. And by the way, in the circumstances that you find yourself in, I want to encourage you to find creative ways to be advocates to be ambassadors for the kingdom of God, whether it's giving away a Bible or whatever, affording, I'd like to see you, make opportunities to make the Lord known in the world. Well, in Genesis chapter 12, then Adonai said to Abram, and in this rendition, the Tree of Life, we use Hebrew terms. Adonai is the Hebrew word for Lord. Then Adonai said to Abram, "Get going out from your land and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. My heart's desire is to make you into a great nation, to bless you, to make your name great so that you may be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but whoever curses you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." This is a great promise in the Bible, and let's just go through it and unpack some of the particulars associated with it. He says first, get out from your comfort zone. Now, in antiquity, people never traveled 100 miles from their place of origin in the course of a lifetime unless they were in the army, going with a number of troops. It's just too dangerous. And a small group, just to leave a security blanket of friends, kinship network, familiarity, and take a leap into an unknown world, that really is quite a stretch. Most people don't do that. But it seems to me that when God does something with someone, he pushes them out of their comfort zone. And it's not easy. For some of you, there can be some ambivalence with going to Christ for the Nations Institute. You're out of your comfort zone. Ambivalence is when you're attracted to something and repulsed from it at the same time. For instance, you might be interested in studying the Bible with me, attracted to, but repulsed because, wait a minute, he uses different language. He uses Hebrew. He uses, higher level English when he talks. That might push you away a little bit. The fact that, I do police stuff, that may bother you as well. It could be that just being in a class like this, you're out of your comfort zone, or maybe just watching a video instead of having a real live instructor. Takes you out of your comfort zone. Maybe you're away from your parents for the first time in a lifetime just to come to Christ for the Nations Institute. Maybe in addition to what I've just described, you're an international student, you don't speak English very well, and you find it hard to deal with me in this class and with the textbook that I impose upon you. Listen, my point here is there's a story here of someone who's willing to step out of their comfort zone. And it takes that, to have faith there's a certain risk component with it. You know, the word confidence. You know, there's scary stuff. You have to have confidence. Confides in Latin is with faith. There is this kind of, you know, leaning in out of your comfort zone. You know, I can assure you, you know, here I am a student at Cambridge University. It is really, really hard. And it's been some 20 years or whatever since I've been a formal student, you know, and it's hard, and they grade really hard. You know, I just got results back from my last essay. They grade hard. It's really hard. And but in any case, you know, you have to throw yourself into it. In any case, there is this story here of a man who rolls the dice against an uncertain future. He's beckoned to go beyond his comfort. In verse 2, my heart's desire is to make of you into a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing. God's heart of heart's desire is to bless this man and for him to be a blessing to others. You know, the interrelationship between those two concepts is very important. Everybody wants to be blessed. You know, if you ask people, who wants to be blessed? Oh, me. Who wants to be a blessing? Well, that sounds like work. That sounds like putting others before you. You know, Confucius, by the way, placed a real premium on that. And other religious systems do as well. That is a respect for others, an honoring of others. Now, I'm not advocating for Confucius here, but I'm just observing that you want to have you want to be great, then be a great blessing yourself. Then help others to be great. There's a proverb that says, a liberal man will be enriched, and he who waters will himself be watered. You know, you want to find a way to be a blessing to others. That, in so many ways, by the way, is the secret to success in life. Well, here God is speaking to Abram and saying, listen, I've got destiny on you, and I'm going to make of you a great nation. In verse 3, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. This is what I call a seminal promise. You know, a promise that gives birth to something. Seminal. I will bless you, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. That there's a man who's marked out for destiny, and there's a promise of greatness to come through him. A seminal promise. By the way, the word seminal, I'm not trying to get kinky here. It comes from the word semen. The word seminary itself. Someone goes to study theology. I'm going to seminary, they'll say. You know, I'm a graduate of a theological seminary. The word seminary comes from semen, and it means to be impregnated. You know, the argument is, as you spend your time studying this, something is going to be born, something is going to be birthed as a result of it. So in seminary, to go get inseminated for dreams to be born, new ways of thinking, new ways of understanding, new ways of being, trajectories in life are set, they're reset, whatever. I mean, it's a great place if you take it seriously. Seminary. Well, seminal. Like I said, I'm not trying to get kinky with you here. A seminal promise is a promise that's made that is going to birth something in the future. It doesn't happen right away. You know, God tells Abram, I'm going to make of you a great nation. I mean, Abraham doesn't really see that in the course of his lifetime. In fact, he's a little slow in getting into the nation-making business with Sarah. You know, finally Isaac's going to come along, and then Jacob and 12 sons. I mean, you're going to go a few generations, and you're not going to have a great nation. We just have a tribe. It doesn't always happen quick. In any case, in chapter 11, 27 through 37:1 in the patriarchal era, there's Abram's genealogy. He's introduced. And then there's Abraham in chapter 12, 1 through 23. There's a lot of text there about him. And Sarah. To me, it's fascinating that his name, Avraham, father of the nation, he's not doing very well in the nation-making business. You know, Sarah can't have a child. You know, it takes a miracle to open up her womb. And it's just an interesting story. God has interesting ways of doing things, and sometimes it takes a while, and we have to be patient with it. You know, I like to say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But patience is called for those who through faith and patience inherit the promises in Hebrews. You know, the book of Hebrews, the author says, we are not those who shrink back, but of those who through faith and patience inherit the promise. It's a good verse. Well, in this early history, you see the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Esau. And then in chapter 37, 2 through 50, there's one of these boys, Joseph. And it's interesting. I've already introduced you to the word primogenitive, which comes from first gene or first seed. In antiquity, as a rule of thumb, well, let's say, I'll begin in modernity and then go back to antiquity. I have two boys. When I die, when my wife and I finish up, the plan is we'll give 10% of our estate to a ministry, but then divide the remainder equally amongst the children. That's the way the game is played today. That's not the way it was played yesterday. In antiquity, wealth was determined by land. And you wouldn't just have 2 sons, you'd have 10. If you have 100 acres and you divide it equally, each boy gets 10 acres, and then they divide it up amongst their boys and their children. It's a checkerboard in 2 generations. Wealth dissipates. The way the game was played is that it's called a primogenitive system, that as a rule, your firstborn male heir would inherit. And he would be kindly disposed toward his brothers, and as the alpha male in the clan, similarly toward his sisters. You know, to marry them off in families of equal station and stature. He would manage it well in theory. But the point is, it's the firstborn male who gets it. Now, what's interesting, if you look at Abraham, who was the firstborn male in that family? Who was it? It wasn't Isaac, because Sarah had a bright idea to bring Hagar into the family and had a child through her, Ishmael. But then you have in the literature, no, that he's not going to inherit. That we're told in Genesis that God is going to make a great nation of Ishmael, who's going to be a progenitor of Arab peoples. And princes will come from them, and he will be a strong man and a force to be reckoned with. But we're told the promise goes through Isaac. If you look at Isaac, Isaac marries Rebecca, and there's 2 sons, Esau and Jacob, in the womb. Esau is technically the eldest, but then he doesn't inherit, Jacob does. Now, if you look at Jacob, his story is frustrating in that his mother, Rivkah or Rebecca, sends him back to Padan Aram, Syria to find a wife, go back to the clan. And there's a woman that he falls in love with, Rachel. And what happens is he works for her, and it's a rather bizarre story that he discovers the next morning after the wedding that he's married the wrong woman. Probably he was drunk. that he was deceived by his father-in-law. He wakes up the next morning, hello, Rachel. What? Rachel, who are you? Hi, honey, I'm your wife. Now, I would have known that before I fell asleep that night. What about you? That he was tricked by his father-in-law, according to the literature. There's a tradition, by the way, in a Jewish wedding where the bride presents, you know how brides present, but then the groom lifts up the veil just to make sure, and then he puts it back down to make sure he knows what he's getting. Because the story here is the man was duped, he was deceived. Probably drunk. Boys will be boys, it's the wedding and what have you. Probably at the bachelor party went a little too long. The way weddings were done back then and festivals association with it, are different than the way it's done today. There's a story there, Jacob wakes up the next morning and realizes that he doesn't have the woman that he thought he was working for. And so he's going to work longer, and there's 2 women, and it's going to wind up 4 women. All these wives are having babies except the woman that he wanted at the first place, Rachel. That this man, Jacob, had a special place in his heart for Rachel before the world got complicated and went different directions that he didn't anticipate. Leave it at that. What happens is Rachel cannot have a child. By the way, it's interesting, if you look at the women, we know the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you look at the wives, Sarah couldn't have a child, took a miracle. Rebecca couldn't have a child, took a miracle. It says Isaac intervened and God answered his prayer. That's how these 2 boys, Esau and Jacob, came. Jacob, the woman that he had the hots for, his favorite lady, Rachel, could not have a child. Finally, she's going to have a child, number 11, Joseph. And then she's going to have another child, number 12, Benjamin, and then she's going to die at childbirth. Now, Jacob has a special place in his heart for these 2 boys. And, in a family system, the other boys knew it. That Rachel was the favored lady and Joey was the favorite boy. And if they were unsure about it, the fact that, it's Christmas and Joey gets this multicolored robe from Neiman Marcus, and the other boys just get, insignificant gifts. The story of, Joseph gets this robe. He enjoys a favored status, and he invokes the ire of his brothers, and they want to kill him. And they sell him into slavery instead. Joseph goes off into slavery. He's sold into Potiphar's house in Egypt. And then there's Potiphar's wife who's got the hots for him. Joseph is represented as having a sterling disposition, sterling character that is perfect. He's an honest, honorable fellow in the way he manages himself, in the way he manages his sexual appetites. The mistress of the house wants to get on it, but he won't have it. So she winds up claiming that she tells her powerful husband, Joey tried to rape me, and Joseph was thrown into prison as a result. I should just say parenthetically that, this is just my own opinion. Feel free to disagree, but, people know what they're dealing with. I think Potiphar probably had some suspicions about his wife. And, he knew about Joseph's integrity. I say that because if you're a master and you have a slave who's raped your wife or attempted to, especially back in this world, you just kill the slave. The fact that he didn't kill him but just put him away says something. Probably in the back of his mind, he wasn't altogether sure of the story. In any case, my conjecture aside, what's apparent in the literature is that God raises him up out of this dark space with signs and wonders. He has a spiritual gift for discernment, and his gift makes room for him, and he's elevated to another place in life, and he plays a part in divine history. Joseph is elevated, the family gets reunited, and the book of Genesis comes to a close. Now, as a close, I want to hark back to something I said when I was introducing previously. assuming I'm recalling correctly. People look and they say, well, you know, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, that's the law. It's all this legalism. Yeah. And you might recall, I gave voice to the fact that's overstated, hyperbole, it's overstatement. That here we've looked at a book and the genre, it's narrative, it's storytelling, and it gives a window into the origins of a tribe, of a people. Not just that. You've heard me to say that the key word for Genesis is Bereshit, beginnings. It offers a telling of the beginnings of the heavens and the earth and the people on the earth. Sin begins. Sin makes its entrance onto the stage of the human drama. The race gets defiled. After all that is played out, then there's the beginnings of a people, Abraham. And God is going to enjoy something. He's going to do something special through Abraham. Abraham's going to enjoy a special place in God's economy, to be a conduit through him, through whom God will work. And he says to Abraham, I'm going to make of you a great nation and a great people, and through you all the families of the earth will be blessed. I mean, there are different ways that all the families of the earth have been blessed through the Hebrew people. That I have a Bible here, and it's so much about Hebrews, written by Hebrews. Jesus, of course, was the ultimate Hebrew. If you look at Matthew, chapter 1, verse 1, in Hebrews, Sefer Toldot HaYeshua HaMashiach ben David ben Avraham, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. It's right there, first verse in our New Testament. Biblical literature, salvation history comes through the Hebrew people. There are a lot of blessings to planet Earth through various scientific breakthroughs, medical, all sorts of things, technological. If you have an iPhone, a lot of that technology was developed in Israel. Televisions, a lot of things just come through kind of Hebrew ingenuity. I am here at Mattingly Hall at Cambridge University, and I will be, in 48 hours, moving to Wolfson College, which is the college that I've matriculated into. I'm just here now, and I'll be there at the housing at Wolfson College. Wolfson College, it's one of the few colleges that also, there's a Wolfson College at Oxford University. Wolfson was a Jewish fella, a guy, a rags to riches story, who became a philanthropist, gave so much of it away to contribute toward education and other things. There's a hospital in Israel and a college that he built and what have you. In any case, there are a lot of ways that God's fulfilled his promise to Abraham in saying, listen, I'm going to make of you a great nation and a great people, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and through you all the families of the earth will be blessed. I believe there's different ways that people have been blessed through the Hebrew people, foremost of which is the ultimate Hebrew person himself, Jesus of Nazareth. Well, so much for Genesis. We'll pick up again with Exodus, and I'll talk to you then. God bless. Bye.